Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast, IDP edition. I'm John Macri, and I'll be going over the top 10 IDP takeaways from week 7. And this week is going to be a 25-minute diatribe about why Ivan Pace should be a full-time player every single week, regardless of who else is available at linebacker. No, I'm kidding. At least as far as spending the entire episode singing the praises of Ivan Pace. Instead, we'll talk some Ivan Pace as well as some key updates on IDP situations around the league, both at linebacker and defensive back, because there are plenty of changes and injuries, of course, always seem to play a big part in these recaps every week, this week being no different. And I'll highlight a defensive lineman as well that has been disappointing us recently. And if there are like situations and or players that you guys want to hear more about, feel free to shout them in the comments. I'll do my best to highlight them down the road, or if it's an easy enough answer, I'll look to respond in the comments as well. Otherwise, these are going to be our top 10 takeaways for the week, and we'll have the IDP fantasy report out on Tuesday around noon Eastern time. That'll have all the snap counts and data and waiver targets, all that kind of stuff, which you can get access to with a PFF Plus subscription, and you'll get access to IDP rankings and of all of our fantasy articles and rankings and tools and all that stuff here at PFF. But without further ado, I want to get into the takeaways here. And the first place that I want to start is with the safety position. And coming off a bye week, I thought it was worth checking back in on the Los Angeles Rams safeties, because when we last saw them, there were some significant changes in the secondary, right? That allowed Cameron Curl to play the more favorable IDP alignments, while Quentin Lake got pushed back into more of a deep safety role and out of his usual slot deployment as well. And in this game, we saw the same usage essentially, right? That we did in week 5. Now Lake, he still had a productive game relative to the position, right? He led the team in tackles with 9 total tackles, but he spent 77% of his defensive snaps from a deep alignment, just 9 snaps each in the box and in the slot. So it worked out fine this week. Lake had the tackles there to help us, but it is kind of concerning usage where we could see those numbers become a lot more inconsistent going forward because of him playing such a deep safety role. And then as for Cam Curl, his usage, it wasn't like, I don't know, it wasn't amazing, but he did spend a lot more time closer to the line of scrimmage, right? Like over 50% of his total snaps, either in the box, in the slot, or on the defensive line, which is exactly what helped him get a scoop and score in this game as well, right? On top of 7 solo tackles. So this was his best fantasy game of the season. That was awesome to see from Cam Curl. The usage here, I think, remaining consistent for 2 straight weeks now and coming out of the bye is what is probably going to keep me putting Cameron Curl ahead of Quentin Lake in the rankings going forward. I'm not going to hate Lake or anything like that, because, he's continued to find a way to be efficient, which has really helped his case. But just based on the alignments and how that projects for a single week, each single week is gonna push Lake a little bit further down the rankings than Cameron Curl. Okay, I knew I was going to highlight the Bengals safeties coming into this week as well, because we have been seeing a very subtle trend with Von Bell and Jordan Battle, where Battle is slowly eating into Von Bell's snap share each week. And how that's worked is basically just by the team giving Battle full drives on his own to play next to Geno Stone and leaving Von Bell on the sidelines for those drives. Unfortunately, in this game, it worked out that Geno Stone actually suffered an injury pretty late in the game, but we were seeing that exact thing that I just talked about, where Battle was getting some drives to his own, and then eventually he and Von Bell played together to cover Stone snaps once he was out. So we'll see if Geno Stone's injury ends up causing him to miss time or not. And if he's back, then Jordan Battle versus Von Bell will continue to be a battle, so to say, worth watching. So if Stone misses time, then Battle he'll be a top waiver target for the safety position. Personally, I don't know if this is going to lead to, like, with all 3 safeties healthy, if this is eventually going to lead to Jordan Battle getting 100% of snaps this season and like Von Bell say being benched or being that minimal snap guy. But Really, I mean, it's even though I think it's criminal that Jordan Battle isn't being utilized more and over Von Bell too, but at the very least, I mean, we should consider it a downgrade to Von Bell's IDP value and just something to kind of keep in mind and keep an eye on here going forward as we see those trends favoring Jordan Battle slowly and Von Bell's snap share coming down a bit. Okay, I want to update one of the bigger changes from last week, where I highlighted all the shifts within Green Bay's secondary, and I started to feel a lot better about Javon Bullard's IDP value as he was like the full time safety, and he was working as the nickel corner as well. However, Green Bay once again moved things around this week. And while not like as significant as a change as last week, as far as the entire secondary moving around, it was enough at least to create a hit to Javon Bullard's IDP stock, which I had just started to move up the rankings. While this week it was Javon Bullard who was only working as the nickel corner, which resulted in a 45% snap share. He played 0 snaps at safety. Meanwhile, Evan Williams was the full-time safety this week, and he led the team in total tackles with 9. So can we trust, Green Bay that this is the usage going forward? I'm not ready to fully embrace it just yet, just because they keep changing things up. And I feel like we have to see it more than 1 week now, because obviously they fooled us before. And considering that they've made so many changes, I think we need to see some consistency before fully embracing like Evan Williams specifically. Like Evan Williams, he could be a waiver wire ad for sure, but might hold off on starting him this week. So tackle numbers, they were great, but keep in mind they were also playing the Texans, who have yielded the most tackles per game to the safety position this season. So we'll see how the matchups kind of shake out next week as well. And then the only other thing, Keyshawn Nixon did remain as the wide corner this week, so barely played in the slot at all. So it does seem like he's going to stick to the outside there alongside Jair Alexander. All right, sticking in Green Bay as we move to the linebackers now, because Quay Walker suffered an injury in the early second quarter of this game, and he did not return. Now, after last week, when we talked about Edgerrin Cooper overtaking Isaiah McDuffie in playing time for that LB2 role, it would only make sense that the depth chart would just kind of shift upwards and let Cooper, either be LB1 or even McDuffie if they felt Cooper wasn't quite ready for that large of a role just yet. But no, as we've seen with the DBs, Jeff Hafley and company need to keep us on our toes and complicate things for IDP purposes. But hey, that's why this show exists, so we can unravel the mess that was the linebacker usage in this game. So this game started with Quay Walker and Isaiah McDuffie as the LB1 and LB2. And then Edgerrin Cooper was just in on the base snaps on that first linebacker drive. Then on the second drive, it was Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper playing 100% of the snaps, with Eric Wilson playing 1 snap and McDuffie not playing at all. Then on the third drive is where we saw Quay Walker get injured, and that was when he was replaced by Isaiah McDuffie and Eric Wilson on that drive. From that point on, it was a pretty steady rotation of either Cooper or McDuffie taking turns being kind of the LB3 / base linebacker on the drive. And then they would come off the field on those 2 linebacker looks, while surprisingly, it was Eric Wilson who served as the green dot 100% snap linebacker over both guys. So this is obviously a case where the Packers don't view Edgerrin Cooper or Isaiah McDuffie as the immediate Quaker replacement, but instead their trust lies in Eric Wilson. Don't ask me why, but hey, he got a couple sacks in this game, which was cool. So Eric Wilson, if Quay Walker is out, Eric Wilson could be stepping into a 100% snap role here. Edgerrin Cooper and Isaiah McDuffie, based on what we've seen here in this game and what we've kind of seen a little bit in recent weeks as well, we can expect those guys to continue rotating drives a little bit more. But yeah, Eric Wilson definitely becomes of interest here. So it's not like one of those situations where Edgerrin Cooper jumps up significantly in value because he might not be that 100% player. And I mean, yeah, he wasn't that 100% player this week. So definitely something to kind of keep in mind there for your waiver wire targets. I would be prioritizing Eric Wilson. Okay, checking in on another one of those teams coming off a bye week, the Miami Dolphins, where the subject in question is Mr. David Long, who last we saw him was splitting his snaps 50-50 with Anthony Walker because it was David Long's first game back off injury. So we knew, that we'd be coming in here, checking this week out of the bye week after a nice long rest period for David Long and seeing if anything changed. And he still was not back to his 100% snap role that he was playing prior to the injury. It was certainly an improvement. He played 68% of the snaps, while Anthony Walker played 32% of the snaps. So there's still hope that he can get there since the Dolphins are using two linebackers on every play. It's just not the same two linebackers outside of Jordan Brooks, right? So Anthony Walker, I mean, he's definitely an experienced vet in the league. So I think there's a chance that they'll still want to keep him involved. And maybe we see Long just be more of a rotational piece, in which case there are probably more reliable linebackers out there that we can target. So just for now, Jordan Brooks is going to be the only trustworthy Miami linebacker, and David Long really just strictly for deeper leagues, right? So he's had plenty of time to kind of heal up, still not 100% player. We'll see how things go next week, but if that snap share doesn't continue to trend upwards, then I would start to just kind of temper expectations for David Long rest of season as well. All right, next up, Ivan freaking Pace. So the Minnesota linebacker core was without Blake Cashman, who's dealing with turf toe, which allowed Ivan Pace to show Brian Flores and everyone why he is him with a massive game, delivering a sack and a fumble 6 in this one. Oh, and he played 100% of snaps in Blake Cashman's absence, which we absolutely love to see. We got the news of Cashman's injury right before our week 7 preview show this week, and Pace moved into the top 12 for me in the weekly rankings because of that. As long as Cashman is out, I think it's going to be really hard to keep Ivan Pace out of that top 12 each week. This is a great defense for linebacker tackle production with a heavy reliance on zone coverages, but it's also kind of the perfect fit for a player like Ivan Pace, who will get lots of blitz opportunities, deliver on the occasional sack for higher upside as well. And then, just looking for Blake Cashman's potential return, did a quick Ask Jeeves search, and that'll tell you that, turf toe is typically a 2 to 3 week recovery time. So at the very least, we're probably not expecting Cashman back in week 8, which will let Ivan Pace season continue, even if for just one more week. But man, the guy's just so good when he's on the field. We had high hopes for him this offseason when they had talked about him wearing the green dot and all that. Turned out to be a lie. But a Cashman injury has kind of pushed him into this 100% snap role, and we got to take advantage of those opportunities when we get them. So Ivan Pace should definitely be in our lineups going forward for as long as Blake Cashman is out, because this is very much a one linebacker system. As you could see on the screen there, Cam Grugier-Hill was barely the LB2. He played 17.5% of snaps. Josh Metellus essentially acts as the second linebacker in these situations. So, Ivan Pace to the moon, baby. Let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts. And speaking of injuries to starting linebackers, we had something similar in Indianapolis as with Minnesota, where EJ Speed was out for this game, which we assumed when his status changed on Friday to doubtful. I had mentioned Jalen Carlies or Carlies, however you say it, on Twitter as the replacement for EJ Speed, which he was before he also got hurt. So that was fun, right? Carlies played 100% of the snaps alongside Zaire Franklin before suffering an injury early in the second quarter. Luckily for those of us, who picked him up and put him into a starting lineup, like he was still able to get 5 tackles and a sack before his day was done. So that was promising to see them kind of trust the rookie in a full-time role, because that was really my only hesitation with Carlies, was if he was going to be a full-time player or if they'd swap him out on obvious passing down, something like that. But nope, they left him out there. The only problem was he got hurt, which led to Grant Stewart. and that wild ass throw running all over the damn field, racking up all kinds of tackles, finishing the game with 18 total tackles. That was the highest mark of the week. And in second, right behind him, his teammate Zaire Franklin with 16 total tackles. So a massive tackle output from the Colts linebackers this week, which is great to see. The problem is only one of them was likely actually started in more than 1% of IDP lineups around the world. So we'll see what happens with EJ Speed and Carly's heading into week 8. But at the very least, we got enough from the Colts to figure out kind of the pecking order among the linebackers here, led by obviously Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, but then Jalen Carly's, then Grant Stewart, and then Segan Alubi closing it up in the back end there. All right, next up, and this one is a really quick and easy update. The Houston Texans were without both Azeez Al-Shaair and Henry To'o for this game. This meant that we got 2 starting replacements at linebacker for the Texans, Neville Hewitt and Jake Hansen. Both players actually played 100% of snaps, which is really the only thing interesting about that is that it gives us not just 2 waiver wire options if both Texans starting linebackers miss another week, but it's also interesting because Henry To'o, who had been a starter for the first 6 weeks of the season, he had only played 100% of snaps once this season. So, for Jake Hansen and Neville Hewitt to get out there and play 100%, that was interesting to see. But I think it also speaks just to the lack of options that they have, right? So I thought Christian Harris was potentially going to come back this week because things were apparently trending in that direction, but just wasn't the case. So we'll see if that changes this week. For now, though, Neville Hewitt, I would say, is the priority. If one of either Azeez or Henry To'o returns next week, assuming we don't hear anything about Christian Harris as well. But Neville Hewitt first if we're prioritizing waivers, and then Jake Hansen second. And then we'll see. We'll just keep an ear to the ground here with Christian Harris and his availability coming off IR. Okay, the last linebacker situation that I want to cover was from this Sunday Night Football game that just wrapped minutes ago. And it's the New York Jets, who, when we saw them last week, CJ Mosley had only played 10 snaps and was clearly being eased back in coming off injury. And we got word a couple days ago that Jamien Sherwood would once again be wearing the green dot, and that was going to allow Mosley to continue kind of easing his way back from injury, which was our concern when we talked about this situation on the IDP preview show, and why I wasn't necessarily comfortable starting CJ Mosley this week. So once we got some confirmation earlier or late after that show, I moved Sherwood way up and Mosley way down in the ranks. And luckily it wasn't a lie from the Jets, because that's exactly what we got from them here in week 7. CJ Mosley played just 32% of the snaps, while Quincy Williams and Jamien Sherwood were the full-time players. So there's definitely part of me that thinks about Mosley's injury maybe being an excuse from the coaching staff to just use Sherwood over him, because he's actually been pretty good. He's younger, obviously. He has a little bit better, movement out there as far as being able to cover on passing downs. Former safety coming out of college. So Mosley probably not a long-term piece here in the Jets defense. Plus, they're perfectly fine playing Sherwood on every down, even though he's got a freaking club on his right hand. So I don't know. Maybe could be some changing of the guard here, but of course that's just me speculating, which isn't based in actual fact, because I don't know for sure. So for now, we work off the information that we have, which is this week 7 usage. And to me, it says that CJ Mosley isn't to be trusted in IDP starting lineups in week 8 either. Unless, of course, that the team comes out and says otherwise, like he'll be back to a full-time role or wearing the green dot, whatever it happens to be, because now they've proved reliable, at least with that information. So we'll see how things shake up the rest of the week. All right, last piece here. I wanted to highlight another disappointing player, and not necessarily one that is disappointing us based on his ADP and draft capital from this offseason, but more just disappointing maybe based on the potential that he flashed in the first month of the season. It's Keon White of the New England Patriots. So White started the season off on fire with 2.5 sacks, then followed that up with a 1.5 sack performance. And for me, usually one of the ways that I look at this is if it's not a player that we were really drafting in most IDP redraft formats or even in Dynasty to an extent, then I might look to see like if it's Fugazi production or and for White, he checked every box, but we're looking when we're he checked every box that we're basically looking for, when targeting kind of long-term production, and I guess more consistent production is what I'm trying to say, most importantly for this season, right? And he had all those markers that we're looking for. He had the elite pass rush metrics through the entire first month of the season. His playing time was and has been as good as we can ask for from a defensive lineman. And he also has decent draft capital behind him as a former second round pick, hinting at least at some pedigree and in the team's belief in him as a potential building block for their franchise. And I don't want to indicate that this isn't the case anymore or anything like that, but we, or maybe just me, was kind of fooled by just how good of an IDP asset he could be this year after that hot start. He definitely cooled down in terms of production after those first 2 games, but the playing time was definitely still there. The pass rush metrics were still pretty good as well. But then over the last few games, we've seen the snap share dip a little bit to the point where, he was consistently getting over 80% of snaps in September and now down below 75% in each of the past 3 games with a season low 69% this week. But then also the pass rush metrics have dipped as well. He had a 90.8 in week 1 pass rush grade, 82.6 in week 2, 81.3 in week 3. Those are great marks. And then his best mark since then came in week 5. It was a 72.4. And then he's got like a couple 60s in there. And that looks like it's probably going to be the case again this week, despite a great matchup against the Jaguars. I mean, unreviewed, we don't even have him logging a pressure in this game. So the pass rush grade currently sits around the 50s. Now, that's far from official yet, since we're still waiting on the Jags to send us all 22 while they travel out of London. But it's not likely to kind of shoot up in it like a huge way in a positive direction. So we'll count this as another down game for Keon White here. Now, again, I'm not giving up on him or counting him down there with like a Matt Judon as like borderline unstartable in most formats, but he'll be coming down the ranks, I guess, going forward here, and more on the kind of fringe of that edge 2, edge 3 range, depending on the matchup, instead of like the potential top 12, top 15 option that he was looking like. So hopefully that's maybe the kick in the ass that he needs. I mean, it worked for Will Anderson when we talked about his pass rushing trending down. I think even Jonathan Grenard as well. But we'll see if I have those kind of superpowers or not next week. So that's going to do it for this week. Again, thank you guys all for tuning in, reaching out, liking, subscribing. I really do appreciate you guys. And if you haven't done so yet, there's still time, obviously, to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel or leave a written 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. I would greatly appreciate that as well. I know some of you have done that as well, and really want to say thank you to you guys for doing that. That means a lot that you're willing to support the show, and hopefully the show leads to some fantasy championships at the end of the season, as long as the fantasy gods cooperate with us as well. So before I go, I do want to shout out the PFF data collection team who puts all this data together. They're grinding it through the weekend, and can't say enough about that team. It is literally the best team in the multiverse. And then, as always, feel free to ask questions in the YouTube comments as well. I try to get to them as soon as I can. But yeah, I'll be back later this week doing a full Week 8 IDP preview with my guy Joey the Tooth. That'll be out on Thursday morning, as usual. And then we'll be breaking down every game heading into that week. So it should be a big one since there are no bye weeks for some reason in Week 8. I don't know what's going on there. But anyways, be a big episode. Joey and I will break down all the IDP relevant news there. And again, be sure to check out the IDP Fantasy Report when it drops on Tuesday. Well worth the PFF Plus subscription. If you like this information, it's just me doing the exact same thing, except for every team and including charts for all the IDPs. I'll also get the IDP rankings up on Thursday morning in article form, but they should be up on Wednesday on the site with our new rankings page as well. So make sure to check out that. But yeah, thank you guys again. And until next time, peace out.